because the moment my eyes drifted somewhere they never should have, she turned her head and caught me. The world seemed to pause right there on the bright shoreline, waves glittering behind her, my boss standing barefoot in the sand, and me frozen with the terrifying knowledge that I had just crossed an invisible line I could never uncross. If you believe that kindness deserves second chances and that one moment does not define a lifetime, please take a second right now to like this video, share it with someone who needs hope, leave a comment, and subscribe to the channel Touch of Kindness. Your support keeps stories like this alive. I had come to the beach because I was exhausted in a way sleep could not fix. It was a late summer morning, the kind where daylight feels honest and exposing, and I told myself I deserved one quiet day before another week of spreadsheets, deadlines, and pretending I was more confident than I felt. My job at the architectural firm paid the bills barely, and my position was fragile enough that I lived with constant fear of being replaced. I was 29, still renting a small apartment with flickering lights, still carrying the weight of my father's debts after his illness, and still convincing myself that I was one good break away from stability. The beach was supposed to be a place where no one knew me, where I could sit under the open sky and remember what it felt like to breathe without pressure. I never expected to see my boss there. Maren Holt was the last person I associated with sand and salt air. At work she was precision and control, always composed, always distant, always dressed in clean lines and muted colors that matched her reputation. She was admired, feared, and misunderstood in equal measure, and I'd spent 2 years working under her without ever knowing anything personal about her life. Seeing her at the beach in daylight felt like seeing a statue step down from its pedestal and become human. She looked different, lighter somehow, her hair pulled back, her posture relaxed, the authority still there but softened by the openness of the place. I told myself to look away. I told myself to pack my bag and leave. But curiosity is a quiet traitor, and loneliness sharpens it. I glanced again, not meaning harm, not meaning anything at all, just another human noticing another human in a place that stripped away titles and power. My eyes lingered where they should not have lingered, and in that exact second, she looked up. Her gaze met mine, steady and unmistakable, and I knew she understood. There was no anger in her face, no shock, just something like disappointment mixed with surprise, and that somehow hurt worse. I spent the rest of the morning in a fog of regret. I did not approach her. I did not move closer or farther. I simply existed in the same space, painfully aware of every breath, every step, every glance. The sun climbed higher, children laughed somewhere near the waterline, and I felt smaller with each passing minute. By the time I left, my chest felt tight with the certainty that I had ruined something important, though I did not yet know what. Monday arrived too quickly. The office buzzed with its usual rhythm, phones ringing, keyboards tapping, voices low and professional. I avoided looking toward Maren's glass-walled office, convinced that any second I would be called in and quietly dismissed. My mind replayed the beach moment again and again, magnifying it until it felt unforgivable. I told myself I was careless, immature, unworthy of the trust my position required. When the email came asking me to see her before lunch, my hands trembled as I stood. Walking into her office felt like stepping onto that beach again, exposed and uncertain. Daylight streamed through the tall windows, illuminating the space in a way that made it feel less like a command center and more like a room, where real things happened. Maren looked up from her desk, her expression unreadable, and gestured for me to sit. I braced myself for the end. What followed was not what I expected. There was no lecture, no accusation, no raised voice. Instead, there was a quiet acknowledgement that we had crossed paths somewhere neither of us had planned to meet. She spoke about boundaries, about professionalism, about respect, but also about humanity and mistakes. She admitted that seeing an employee in such an unguarded setting had unsettled her too, not because of what I did, but because it reminded her how thin the walls were between who we were at work and who we were outside of it. I listened, ashamed and relieved all at once, realizing that my fear had blinded me to her complexity. Life did not suddenly become easier after that conversation, but something shifted. Maren became more observant of the people around her, and I became more careful with myself. I threw my energy into my work, not out of fear this time, but out of a renewed sense of responsibility. I stayed late, learned more than was required, and tried to be the kind of employee who earned trust rather than assumed it. Days turned into weeks, and the beach incident faded into something less sharp, a memory that taught rather than punished. As autumn approached, the firm took on a community project, redesigning a public space for families affected by recent flooding. It was a daytime effort that required empathy as much as skill, and I watched Maren in a new light as she listened to stories of loss and resilience. She was different there, softer, more human, and I realized that my brief, awkward glimpse of her at the beach had been a crack in the image I had built, not a flaw in her character. She carried her own burdens, her own loneliness, her own need for quiet places where she could exist without expectation. Working on that project changed me. I began to understand that respect was not just about where you looked or what you said, but about how you saw people as whole beings. I volunteered more, listened more, judged less. The weight I carried from my father's debts and my own insecurities did not vanish, but it became lighter as I stopped letting one mistake define me. Maren noticed too. She trusted me with more responsibility, more creative input, and one afternoon she thanked me for my dedication in a way that felt sincere and grounding. The beach never came up again between us, not directly. It did not need to. It had done its work quietly, teaching me about awareness and growth. On another bright morning months later, as sunlight filled the office and the city hummed awake outside, I realized that I was no longer afraid of being seen. I had learned to hold my gaze with intention, to meet the world with respect rather than hunger, and to forgive myself for being human. Stories like this are not about scandal or punishment. They are about moments that test who we are and who we choose to become afterward. If this story touched your heart, reminded you of a mistake you learned from, or gave you hope that kindness can coexist with accountability, please take a moment now to like, share, comment, and subscribe to Touch of Kindness. Your engagement helps these stories reach people who need them most. Before the final words fade, I have one special request. Please comment below with the word growth if you believe that one mistake should never erase a person's worth. I still go to the beach sometimes, always in the daytime, always with a sense of calm I did not have before. The waves remind me that life moves forward no matter how heavy the moment feels, and the open sky reminds me that we are allowed to learn, to change, and to become better than we were yesterday.